Welcome to the Punjabi Mental Health Podcast by Taraki. I'm your host Sharanjit Singh, and I'm really excited that we're here to do our first live podcast in Southall with a brilliant audience and here at a beautiful community venue, the Dominion Centre. Now, Southall holds real importance for our communities here in the UK. A hub of Punjabi and Desi communities for over 50 years, creativity, cuisine, clothing, and community. So we're really lucky to be here today having a conversation about creativity and mental well-being for Punjabi men with our four fantastic guests, who I'm going to ask to introduce themselves very soon. But before I do that, I just need to admit one thing. I'm not from Southall. I'm from Birmingham. I don't know Broadway, but I know Soho Road. I appreciate our creatives from Southall, like Punjabi Hit Squad, but I'm from the land of Apna Sangeet, B21, Apache Indian. But thank you for welcoming me here. And thank you not for pushing me out. But I'm so glad to be joined here today by people who have a closer connection to Southall, to our communities here in the local area. And so with that in mind, I would just like to ask our panelists to introduce their name, what brings them here to the live podcast event, and our first really serious question. You're not meant to laugh, they don't know it's a not serious question. Which is, what's your favorite type of paratha? Okay, so I also don't want any fights. And also don't really want the audience to fight people if we don't agree. This is a chance for us to hear those different opinions we mentioned earlier and put that into practice. So I will hand it over to Manu first.
Cool. Thank you all for being here. It means a lot. My name is Manu. I'm a creative. I'm an activist. Born and raised in Southall. Do a lot of creative stuff in the area and very much excited about being in this space now. I lead all the creative strategy and branding in Dominion Centre and across the arts, heritage and library spaces in Ealing as well. Prior to that, I do a lot of art in Southall, founded the first book and art shop in Southall a few years back. And we used to do loads of like community-focused events to champion grassroots artists, but also like very well-known artists as well. And just creating a platform for kind of the community, maybe not creators, but communities come together and just have a safe space to access things that they don't have access to despite our great heritage and history. That's kind of me in a small little nutshell. And my favorite. He
avoided the paratha question.
I've been stressing about that all week actually. So I would say Mudli is my favorite. It's my favorite. It's not my bibi's favorite or my mum's favorite because it takes a bit longer to make. You know, because you got.
Are you not making them?
I don't make them.
Why are you making them?
I should make them. That's a separate conversation. I like eating them. So Mudli's my favorite. But I do know there's a bit more like time and care needed when you're preparing Mudli for paratha. So, but yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Tamur. What brings me here is our work at Taraki. So I'm the men's project lead at Taraki for the last 4 years now. I don't have like a mental health background. I am actually someone who started attending Taraki spaces about 6 years ago now. Sharanjit invited me to the first one back in 2019 November, and I remember we met there as well. And it was like an interesting period in my life because in my 20s, I had like a corporate job back then. I used to work in central London. I used to feel quite lonely, I think is a good word for it. Socially isolated, I think is a much even better word for it. And so he invited me to the spaces, and then I started attending the spaces so much that the facilitators would call me like part of the furniture. So about coming up to 4 years now, he messaged me saying, hey, I have a job for you. And I thought he just wanted me to do some designs on Canva or something like that. But he was like, I would like for you to lead the peer support work at Taraki, which was an incredible vision, right? So like, to go from someone who saw the benefit of the men's peer support spaces, for then him to ask me to come and lead that work, because I have no mental health background. So there was a lot of like imposter syndrome, and we also didn't know what the work looked like. But here we are 4 years later, and we've trained up a team in Southall, but we've also gone international, so Australia, Canada. We have a strong network up in Midlands, and Abraj is one of the people who attended the program the first time. So what brings me here is like, I think, honestly, it's like love of community and building spaces where people can connect, because I think having felt lonely and isolated in my 20s, I just want spaces where people can just come and be themselves. I think that's the most important thing. And the most controversial question you've asked, I'm going to go with aloo. I still remember my mum used to make aloo parathe, and like that was incredible. So I'm going to go simple and like keep it as a, take out all the nuance.
I feel after I have an aloo paratha, I have to fall asleep for like half an hour.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tamoor.
My name's Sim. I'm a photographer, videographer, storyteller. So a lot of my work focuses on storytelling. I've been doing a lot of work with the local councils and organisations in and around Southall, Hounslow in the last few years. My background isn't in photography or anything creative really. I did a maths degree and spent most of my working life in finance and professional services. So I worked in some big companies. And it's only recently in the last few years where I've kind of made that switch over. So yeah, I've been on the periphery with Taraki, following from afar, and I got a call from Tanya, and Sharanjit invited me to speak on this panel, and I said yes immediately. And then it hit me afterwards that I'm going to have to speak in front of all these people. So yeah, that's what brought me here. I didn't really think about it too much. What's my favorite paratha? I think I have to go with aloo. Aloo wala paratha, fresh with some makhan and a bit of achar and fresh dahi. You can't go wrong though. I think with any choice, it's a winner. I think.
You know, you're making people hungry.
Well, as soon as I heard your question, I was thinking, should I have paratha in the morning before I come? But then I might fall asleep. So tomorrow is paratha day for sure.
Fantastic.
So, my name's Kuljit or Kuch. I did have paratha before I came here, so I'm kind of regretting it a little bit now. But what to say? So, I have been a psychiatrist. I'm also creative. Work with music, paint, digital tech. Currently studying tech and art. I've also worked with Taraki in the early stages. I used to run the LGBT group, which then became the Open Minds Project, which is now running as the Syrian Collective. So yeah, we've known each other for a little while. Why am I here? I'm here because I'm super interested in creativity. I love it as a methodology, as a thing that can help with mental health, a way for us to understand ourselves and understand the world. And I'm really feel privileged to be part of this panel to talk about it. And then in terms of paratha, I mean, I guess maybe I'll be controversial and say plain. So yeah, and the reason I say plain, I was thinking about it. I thought aloo and I thought dal, but I thought plain because I can have more. So if you have plain paratha, you can have more, and it always makes whatever you're having it with taste better. So that's my answer.
There's like a philosophical conversation about paratha that I think can be had from that.
The world and the universe.
And all we've done actually is trick people, because that's all we're going to talk about for the next hour. So, no, fantastic. Thank you so much, Guljeet, and thank you all for introducing yourselves. I guess I want to jump straight into things, and I've just realised I've got my sunglasses on my head. I guess I want to jump straight into things and think a bit about creativity, because creativity is such a broad word, it's such a broad practice, it's such a broad everything. Some people might think about music, art, literature, even creating a new style of paratha. You know, everything. All these different things come under that banner. And I guess, how do you define creativity, and how have you seen creativity presenting itself in our communities? Yeah. So I'm going to open up with that, and anyone can go ahead and give that a go.
It's a kind of a hard question. I don't really like the word creative or
Yeah.
creativity either. It's just, certain words get overused, and I think it can be a bit of a barrier, just that word itself. Like, what is creative? So to define it is hard, but it's a good question because it's had me thinking since we had our chat about kind of like what we might talk about today. But a lot of my creativity is kind of born from or created by chaos. And Southall's a very beautiful place to me. I love it. It's in everything I do, and I try to champion it in so many ways. And a lot of what I do is actually not about Southall, but some people get that, some people don't. It's really, Southall's like a kind of like just a tool to talk about other things, because there's so much of Southall, I think, where people can take bits from, despite what your heritage might be or your cultural background. You could probably find something in Southall that speaks to you in your own space or your own way. So yeah, but most of my creativity comes from chaos. So if I'm doing something, it's either been chaos at home, or it's been, and then using that chaos to create something nice. Or it's been like, even in my studio, or when I do things, like even when I'm here, I'm trying to think like in a chaotic way. And I guess that comes back to like how things can be when you're growing up in maybe a Punjabi space. And Southall, when I grew up, was chaotic. This space outside of these four walls is quite chaotic, to be honest. We have various challenges around this part of Southall. People forget about this part of Southall a lot. People forget about Havelock Estate, this part of Southall, some of the challenges that we have over there. So, but yeah, chaos is for me the word I use, because I like to look at that word and break that word, and just, if I'm making a shirt, I use chaos to start. If I'm designing a tee, I use chaos. If I'm developing our next programming for this space here, I use chaos as my starting point, because that's what was in front of me when I was growing up. I saw things when I was younger at school or growing up that you shouldn't have to see. Now I work here, I see some of those people I went to school with, or their family or friends who are doing things that they shouldn't be doing. But it's again coming back to that's what's around you. So I like to, instead of fighting that, for a long time I described Southall as a bit of, I've had like a 12 round boxing fight with my favourite place in the world. But I've had a fight with it. And afterwards, like, we shook hands and I get Southall, Southall gets me. Because I rejected Southall for a long time, even though I love it. But I didn't feel seen in Southall. Yeah? So I was like, people don't tell me that jazz and rock was born here. If you look around the walls, I've tried to curate certain things in the process to get people thinking about that. Because I grew up on jazz and rock and soul. But I did listen to Bhangra, but people who saw me were like, they didn't accept me in their space. So it's everywhere I went was chaos, because people didn't understand me, understand me in that way. But I feel like I've had that fight with it, and now we shake hands and I get both sides of it. But yeah, I guess it's just using what's in front of you. For a long time I was like, it doesn't get me, so I have to be different in a different space. Whereas now I'm like, I get it, I understand me as well. And why not use that chaos in a positive way? So everything I do is very much driven by positive kind of community initiatives, whether I'm running a sound system festival on Broadway or running like an art exhibition in here. It's all kind of born from that kind of that chaos, but using it instead of fighting it, basically. So, but yeah, that answer might change next week. I don't know. It's like, because it changes.
As chaos changes.
Chaos changes, so that's kind of how I approach things, yeah. So just literally, I think if I look at a lot of my work I've created over the last few years in museums or here or wherever, whether it's just stuff in South or street art that I do, it's all delivered from chaos. And I like that. I like using that as a way to talk about things. But in a positive way.
Yeah.
Like, it's positive chaos. Like, it's kind of nice, so yeah.
And how do others feel about that kind of chaos element? Does that chime with yourselves, or is it different in your definition?
Yeah, I mean, I guess when I think about creativity, I think now, because I've studied it a little bit as well, I think in my mind there's two bits for me. One is the kind of everyday. So it's the creativity that's going on in everyone's lives all the time. And when I think back to my childhood, there was creativity around us all the time. So like my gran was making her clothes, people were building things, people were making things out of wood, decorating things. You go to a party, people have to get dressed up, they're choosing their outfits, they're putting their makeup on. The food, so you give, usually it's women, you give someone in the house a vegetable, and they make it into something, right? It doesn't matter what it is, anything can be turned into a sabji. And I think there's an element of can-do creativity that is built in to the culture that I experienced growing up. And I think I only realized that it was there when I met other cultures, probably like English culture in where I was living and where I went to study. You'd wear a bright top and people are like, oh my God, that's so bright. Why are you wearing a bright top? I was like, well, no, that's just like everyday color for us at home, right? And I think there was a richness and diversity of creativity that was in the house, which I hadn't even realized until I was out of the house. And then I think the other bit of creativity is probably what you might see in a museum or in a gallery or design. And I think that's a different kind of creativity for a different purpose. But I think when I think of creativity, I think of both of those things. And in my work, I try and like smush the two things together. Because I think the everyday creativity can often get lost when you're thinking about museums or galleries or whatever.
And is there you mentioned that creativity in the home. Is there like something in particular that just fully stands out? You mentioned obviously like food, you mentioned decoration, you mentioned people wearing things. Like what sparks in your mind when you think about creativity in the home?
I guess it's, so I'm thinking about like home culture. And so I'm thinking about when you walk into someone's house, the care that's been applied to decorating the house, placing things, what's in, what's out.
That gumble everyone's got.
Well, that's it.
Big, thick ones.
Yeah, because somebody's chosen that,
Yeah.
and then somebody's maintained it, and sometimes things get passed down. And I think that if you've grown up in Punjabi culture and that's the norm for you, you don't realize. In my work, when I was working as a psychiatrist, I used to go into so many people's houses, and you could see the cultural differences with other cultures. So you got that sense of creativity looks different in other settings. And I think my experience of Punjabiness, living in Southall, growing up in Southall, is it was easy to forget that even as you're walking down the streets, that then the streets were spilling out with like clothes and jewelry and smells and food and everything. And that's literally history, like creativity as history out on the streets. But because it's every day for us, it's kind of like, oh, that's just Punjabi culture or Southall culture or whatever. Go and live somewhere else and go to the high street and see what, the difference really.
Amazing. And so, Sim and Taimur, how does that kind of all chime in with yourselves?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question. Growing up, I was born and raised in Southall. I grew up down the road. I went to Fedston High School. I walked past Dominion Centre all the time. I didn't really associate Southall with creativity and art. And I think it's more of a recent awakening, seeing things, appreciating them, just noticing them, being aware.
What kind of things are you noticing?
So, like we're talking about family, I think about my mum. She did some work in like tailoring, like a lot of mums might have done in Southall, and that kind of obsession with fashion, embroidery, bright colours, which is in our culture. And yeah, it's not an immediate connection between art, creativity, and fashion, or just colours or dance. These things are happening all around us.
Yeah.
So when you ask the question, what does creativity mean to you? In a broad sense, it's having an idea and then putting it out into the world. So that thing not existing before, maybe only in your head, and then seeing it to fruition. And when you think of it like that, it could be anything. But I grew up thinking art, creativity is art, and art means like painting, for example, or sketching, something very visual. But yeah, it's only when you move away and maybe you get, as you get older, you take time to reflect on what does self-expression mean for yourself. And a lot of that for me was fashion or dressing. I know I'm a bit like toned down today, but I normally wear like different color pugs, and you see that through family as well.
You did mention this earlier, and it links back to what you were saying about your journey into the work that you do. And I know our communities can sometimes focus on other paths into people's careers and jobs. I guess for you, how did that play out? Because, similarly to even Kuljit mentioning and Taimur mentioning, you've moved from a particular type of work into the creative space. And so for you, how did that go? What did that look like?
It's funny when I talk about it because they're like such extremes. And on that journey is a lot of like self-discovery and awareness of who you are, who you want to be. Growing up here, like I was saying, I didn't associate this town, this area, community with creativity and art. I was very focused on getting good grades, getting into university, studying, getting a good job. So like anything that wasn't contributing to that wasn't worth spending time on.
In your mind at that
In
point?
my mind, it was that it's either like a waste of time or it's not going to help me in some way. It's only later on you realize how important those things are, because you're kind of shutting off one side of you completely. So yeah, for me, when I was kind of going through more of a tougher time, that's where I started leaning into the more creative side. So self-exploration, discovery. So I went back to things that I liked doing, and I started with sketching and design, something I used to do in like year 7, year 8, year 9, I had a sketchbook. So I was like, let me just do that again, because I used to like doing that, and then I stopped for some reason. Maybe I got caught up with other priorities. And then from there, you know, photography was always kind of being on the side. I was taking pictures out of a small point and shoot camera, or use my phone, but never like, really taking it seriously. There was a point where I read a book, and it made me think about, you know, how much time I have and what I should be spending my time on. And I thought, let me just invest in this. So I spent a decent amount of money on a good camera, and that meant that I had to then commit to that. So yeah, I had to do it with intention. It wasn't like there were loads of things happening around me, I could just dip in and out. I had to fully give it my attention and commit to it and learn to love it again. So yeah, after this kind of up and down journey, you start reflecting, why do I feel a certain way? What's my connection with this thing? Why do I feel good about certain things? Why do I not? It's a long story.
Yeah. But it's an important story, and I think it's one that a lot of people might be able to connect with in other ways, because I think, as you've all described, there is an inherent creativity to life, and particularly within our communities, we see creativity around us in different kinds of ways. Even if we're used to seeing it every day, and we almost become desensitized to it in a way. And so I think it's always really helpful to remind people that actually creativity surrounds us, and all of us in different ways have this kind of creative knack. And it's not just about if someone can sketch or if someone can create art or curate art. It's a whole host of different things. And I was just going to go to Tamoor on that understanding creativity piece, but then also, as Sim was saying, it helped him at a difficult time. And so how would you understand creativity, Tamoor, and how do you think it links into well-being?
Yeah, so for me, like creativity, I would never say I'm a creative person or I have like creative outlets, but you check my Instagram and I'm taking like Polaroids and I'm spending money and I'm like designing stuff. So for me, it always felt inaccessible just because I never really saw creative brown people, even though there were so many, but you never really saw yourself in that sense, because I think there was an inaccessibility to it. But for me, creativity is just being left alone. I know that sounds like very insular, but I remember in year 8, my mum is great at art and I'm a relatively good sketcher. And I would just we would go to the art museum in London, and I would just go there and I'd just start sketching, and I would just constantly be sketching all the time. And it was such a cute thing I did. By year 9, year 10, I'm not doing that. I don't want to be seen as like a soft kid or a soft boy who's sitting there sketching away. And I think had I had done those things, it would have helped me at a time where I needed it most. And so for me, like specific to like well-being or feeling well, the things I needed the most in terms of like creativity were the things I stopped doing when I needed them most. And it's only in my 30s that I've started doing creative things again. So like I doodle a lot, so I have like a notebook and I'm just constantly doodling. Similar to you, I got a Polaroid camera and I was like, okay, this is really cool. It wasn't really about trying to make things look cool or have an Instagrammable account. It was more just to be able to like, how do I see things? And sometimes it works or it doesn't work. So I think for me, creativity is quite beautiful now because it means that it gives me the space to be imperfect. Like I take some Polaroids where it's just like you see nothing. You just see like a flash and like, oh, that didn't go that well. And I had hoped for something better, but that's just life and it's not gonna go that way. And I think specific to your question, how has creativity helped with my well-being? When I do creative things, 80% of those things will not go the way I had planned, and that is how I manage my well-being. There are some days that it doesn't go well, but like I do with creative stuff, I just have to do it and we'll see how it goes. I've gotten back into doodling. I've got like a notepad and I've got like a heavy marker, and I haven't done that since I think 2004, so like 21 years. And so on days or any given day, whether I'm traveling or whatever I'm feeling, I'm just doodling away. And some days it feels good, and sometimes like, that's how I had imagined I wanted it to look. And some days, like I was on the beach at Bournemouth and I tried to doodle a seagull and it looked like Batman jumping out of a building. It just didn't go the way I had planned. But creativity has really helped me with that as I get older, to just accept things as they are, and that really helps with my well-being. So I would never say I'm a creative person. I don't think I'll ever wear that label because I'm just, I don't know, there's an inaccessibility that felt like, we used to visit Southall when I was a kid, and I grew up in East London, so Ilford is quite similar to Southall. It is chaos. So I think as a child of chaos, you never think you're refined enough to do something artistic or creative. So I never really felt with that label, but I know what creativity means for me now, and something that is developing. And it's just expression, whether it's a good day or a bad day, and it is specifically linked to my well-being. Whatever it looks like, whether it's taking a Polaroid, whether it's taking pictures of people that I love, whether it's doodling, whether it's writing, as long as I just keep doing those things, I have this motto in life: if it feels good, keep doing more of it. And so a lot of the creative things help me with that.
And you said something really interesting at the beginning, which was about not wanting to be seen as that soft kid.
Yeah.
When you were growing up, sitting, doodling, drawing, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And so I guess it kind of opens us up really nicely to that conversation around men's mental health and men's well-being. And we know that is a conversation that hasn't been easy over the years. But how do these things connect? I'd love to hear just about how those conversations around creativity and particularly men's mental health and well-being can connect. Because I agree with what you're saying, Timur. Sometimes creative output can be seen as soft in some cases. And we know that often men are told they need to be everything apart from being soft.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, how do we feel that relationship works?
For me, I recognized about myself that I would overthink. So if I was feeling anxious, I would bottle up all the feelings. So there comes a point where you can't do that anymore, right? And it will manifest somehow physically, or it will come out. So you have to learn how to stop bottling that up, and becoming aware of it, and then learning how to express that or release that somehow. So how that started for me was just getting those feelings out somehow. And for me, putting pen to paper or pencil, whatever it is, it was just a method of releasing. And then you can start to kind of learn how to express yourself better, kind of taking those thoughts and making sense of it. So if you're journaling, or if you're creating art, or if you're telling a story, you have to the thoughts can become all jumbled in your head, but when you start writing it out, it starts to make sense. And then you can let go of it. And it's funny, we're talking about, if you say appearing soft, but if we think about music, that's probably the most well accepted form of expressing feelings, right? And how many hit songs have been sung by men talking about love or heartbreak or whatever? We probably just don't even notice it. But it's around us, but maybe not all the methods and all the forms are accepted equally.
I guess thank you for bringing that up, Timur, and Tim for talking about it, because I think when I was thinking about it, I was thinking about ideas about vulnerability and risk. And I think for me, that's I think it's kind of come up in some of the conversations, this idea of when you make something from scratch, you're taking a risk. And when you put it out into the world, it feels like a big risk. And I think I would say that one idea about men, and I'm saying this like not all men, but just the idea of men, is that it's hard to be vulnerable with something you've made and put it out into the world. I think we're not taught to take that kind of risk. We're taught to be strong. And I think when you make something and even if you feel critical about it as well, you're like, I think this is shit, or not very good, you know, and I've made this thing, why would I show it to anyone? Because they're gonna think it's crap as well. Why would I expose myself to that level of vulnerability? Even though I've been doing like creative stuff for many, many years now, I still make work and I think, oh my God, this is, well, I say, oh my God, this is rubbish, but there's a smaller part of my brain now that's like, I'm not happy with this outcome. But what I've had to learn over the years is to become comfortable with the fact of feeling judged inside and outside for the creativity I'm producing. And I think there, like you said, there's like acceptable creativity for a man to do in certain environments. I would say like painting, particular kinds of painting, or like making clothes, these kinds of things. There are particular lines where you can do that. And if you start stepping outside of that, then it feels like you're going to be at risk of being judged for being soft or gay, I guess, is that, you know, and that's obviously something that, you know, those kinds of things. So there's going to be something about your manhood is going to be questioned if you do the wrong kind of creativity. So best not to do it at all and shut it down, kind of thing.
And kind of de-risk the whole situation.
Yeah.
Okay. Manu, I don't know, just it's interesting, I think, because obviously we've been working on Punjabi men's mental health work here in Southall, and yourself, Damoor, has been leading it with yourself, other folks in the audience and also here today to start those conversations. And so how do you see these things linking together? Because obviously you exist in the creative world, and then you've also put yourself out there to try and do some positive work around Punjabi men's mental health. How do you see that connection there?
Yeah, I mean, it is complex, definitely. Like, there's no shying away from it. I mean, even when you think about music as well, a lot of the reason why I probably rejected certain music when I was young is like my dad brought me up on like jazz, very soft tones, like Nina Simone. Later I found Cleo Lane, and you know, very subtle vibes. It's very softly, gently spoken, and Ray Charles and things like, and Coltrane. But I didn't find a Punjabi Coltrane when I grew up. There was, obviously now I know my history of the poetry that comes from our region or collective South Asian space. But it's interesting, like with a lot of Bhangra music when I grew up, it's quite aggressive, I thought. I hope no one takes that the wrong way, but I didn't really like, even the environment in which Bhangra is performed. Like if I go to a wedding, and I didn't get it until I got married, which is like all the boys just dancing like with a bottle on their head. But if my cousin goes for a cigarette outside, like everyone's looking at him. So if my cousin goes to have something else in a cigarette form outside, everyone looks at him. And let alone like my wife or girlfriend or friend or woman, whoever was around at that time, if someone had a woman in their life, if they went outside and did that thing, it'd be really judged. And I think I can come back to that kind of like, musically, our music that I grew up on was not always the softer spoken poetry in our space, which I've found more recently because I've tried to understand that awareness, like it was around me. And I guess, yeah, there's the kind of like this aggressiveness, I guess, with the music, and not even sometimes the music, but maybe the environment in which the music is held. Even my first birthday party was in this hall, and Harps knows, my wife there, when I started working here, and I was like, kind of on a bit of a journey, like, man, my first birthday was in here, and now like I'm able to do things here. And I watched the video, and the amount of people in that video have got a bottle on their head doing Rail Gadi, and it's all the men just running around like crazy, and it's like loud. And it's kind of like, yeah, it's fun, it's kind of funny, and it's kind of beautiful. It's like a communal community thing, but it's also like kind of what's going on. I guess it goes on to like alcoholism and other things, but yeah, I guess the music side of things is, I think, very interesting. Just got me thinking about that and how music is listened to and heard. And I think that then breeds maybe like this aggressive nature, or I need to be strong. Some of the lyrics and some songs that make it into the mainstream space aren't the most positive. Some language isn't the most positive. But those artists are hugely amazing artists, and there's a commercial side to what they do. They need to sell records, so they'll say certain things. And you go home and you translate that lyric, you're like, I don't believe I was just saying that with a group of uncles and aunties and my nephews and nieces, and it's acceptable. And my cousin, who went for a cigarette half an hour ago, is still getting told off and spraying himself because he's like, oh, what if I get caught? Bro, look what we've been around for the last 4 hours on the wedding, like the music, the alcohol, all this craziness. So I think that kind of hit me as someone who's like into music quite a lot. I didn't know who my John Coltrane was when I was younger, and I found through some of the creatives I'm around, I've unlearned some of the things I didn't know about our culture, but I've also learned there was amazing poetry in our region, South Asian space, and through spaces like this, we're seeing more communities come together about who are championing those things. But yeah, and then I think maybe kind of a separate tangent, but I guess today is like we're kind of having a chat, like you said. I never really saw anyone cry when I grew up as well, like that crying side of things. And even when you think about music, like music always evokes something. Like if you're listening to like, when I was listening to Slipknot when I was young, like heavy metal, it's because like there was so much going on in my life. So I was like heavy, like Metallica, Slipknot. My dad grew me up on AC/DC and Heater at the same time. It was like, whoa, this is crazy. But my dad liked AC/DC, but he was angry when he was growing up because things were going around him in Southall in the 80s, which weren't normal. So it's like fight music. It was like resistance music, but there's also like sort of poetry in there as well. But as I got older, I started listening to like sort of different kind of things, but that music evokes something, right? So when you're listening to like, if you're in an angry mood and you put on some like, I don't know, some heavy metal track, you're gonna get it out in some way. If you're in a kind of a very lovey mood or romantic mood, you might put on some jazz and some soul music, to be in that space. And I think that's something that, we can probably think about because the music can evoke an emotion. And I think that's can then evoke you to make you maybe be more vulnerable and allow you spaces to cry. And growing up, didn't see anyone cry because the music that I grew up around was quite in a certain way, really. Or not in the house, it wasn't, but outside the house, it was everyone driving. Everyone knows about our classic car scene in Southall. People, that's what you heard. It was literally like that, like all the music shops, ABC, Metro. It wasn't some really nice ballad being played out. It was like blasting music. It's still like that. It's great. Like there's a guy that goes on a tractor every day on Broadway and around here, and it's like blasting music. So I think not seeing people cry was one thing, and I think one thing that's helped me actually is making time to be vulnerable and feeling time to like actually have like a little cry every now and then. And it's a good thing. It's like a release. Not saying that I just sit there and just get upset, but not seeing that growing up, and I listen to certain music when I'm in a certain mood now. So when I put that on, that makes me feel a certain way. And when I feel that certain way, then that emotion kind of comes out either in some creative form or, maybe I'll have a little like a cry. When I'm riding my BMX around an area, I'm just riding my bike and I'm like, just feeling a bit emotional. And I'm like, nah, it's the wind in my eyes, but it's not.
It's the pollen.
So yeah, I would say like just a bit of a tangent, but I think just being vulnerable is a really good point, and also just the music and the space we consume music, because music's a big part of our culture, I think, and it opens a conversation about other things that exist within our culture, positive, but also maybe like how we consume music, and how we release music, and what we write in our music, and what space the music is in, and what's around that music. And that then can evoke emotions outside of that space, and maybe our music doesn't allow us to be so vulnerable sometimes, because our music is evoking a stereotype sometimes. I can't speak for all of our music. I'm just saying what I hear in the mainstream, because there's amazing creatives and musicians and artists who are like championing really cool messages in their lyrics or their songs or their music, but it's still predominantly in certain spaces doesn't allow you to be vulnerable.
But I think that conversation about vulnerability opens up that whole connective space between creativity, putting something out there, putting yourself in something, allowing yourself to put yourself in something, and then also, particularly when it comes to Punjabi men, that mental health conversation, which is so connected to vulnerability. And I guess the more from the work that you've been leading on, how do you see that connection between creativity and mental health, or vulnerability and mental health for the men that we work with?
It's a really good question, and what you said is really important. Modeling So we don't necessarily see much modeling of what vulnerability looks like, what navigating your mental health looks like as well, or navigating your mental well-being. Like, using creativity as an example, growing up, like, I was like doodling, I was sketching, I could draw Batman in 5 seconds, I was that good at it. And by year 9, year 10, all I'm doing is lifting weights. I was lifting weights 3 times a day, and it's the fact that once, not only did I find like safety away from creativity as a teenage boy, or amongst all the aggression, like teenage boys can be aggressive, I was aggressive, through the weightlifting, through like more stereotypical traditional ways of being masculine. So my creativity side, I threw that off the rack. Like truly, I was like, I went to where I was not only legitimized or like validated, but I was celebrated. So I was lifting weights so much. And so like out went.
If you see a picture of Tamoor when he was a teenager, he looks completely different.
Yeah, I was like this, and I wore it like extra small as well, just to show it off. But what it meant was all like the creative ways that I could express my emotions, they went out the window. I didn't care about them one bit. All I cared about was the validation of other boys. And I think that's another really important conversation. When men do things that are more traditionally masculine, it's for the validation of other men. They think they're doing it under the pretense that it's for women and women will like that. It's not always the case. And so going back to your question about like creativity and vulnerability, specific to like mental well-being, because I never really saw modeled like what does it mean to be a man who navigates his emotional well-being in like a very balanced way. And that's not to point fingers or blame anyone. It's what we've been raised in. So for me, creativity now is quite an integral part of how we support ourselves and other men. And I don't think it needs to be anything complex. Or that's why I always say, like, I don't really identify as someone who's creative. For me, creativity is all about connection, whether it's connection to yourself or the connection to other men. And so, like, specific to the work that we do at Taraki, like, we've got some of the people who attended the program. A big part of that program is connection. And so for me, that is creativity because you're creating social connection bonds with other people. And of course, in the program that we delivered, there is some drawing, there's some poetry. You made an amazing example of like a shoe that carries your memories. That was incredible.
He doesn't even remember it.
He doesn't even remember it.
It was a fun day, yeah.
It was a fun day.
That was fun, yeah.
It was a fun
I
session.
start thinking about it for the next month. But, yeah.
But a big part of like, to the work that we're doing at like Taraki and the work that we do with Punjabi men is embedding that creativity again, so that the men in our communities feel like there's a sense of like, maybe I can reconnect with some things that I did as a younger person. I'm using myself here as an example. That kind of like open up parts of me that I haven't really opened up in years. So like, I'm doodling again, like I did back in 2004, and I haven't done it since. And it's like just the act of being able to do that, it kind of brings up things and access to things that I haven't really been able to access for 21 years. And so like, yeah, it's really important that part of creativity and how that can be embedded in Punjabi men, or generally like men's mental well-being. But I think the approach has to be a bit more based on the work that, or my experiences of the work we do at Taraki. It just has to be slipped in a bit. I personally don't think we're ready at a time yet where it's like, come and do this very creative workshop and get in touch with your emotions. I think that doesn't necessarily go down that well or isn't as marketable. It's just about slowly slipping in those means of like creativity so that the men can connect to themselves. And hopefully a better connection to yourself means a better connection to the men around you, your society, the people you care and love about. So yeah, for me, I see now creativity as a really important tool and means of self-expression towards a better society and a better future. Because ultimately, I try to see things from like a sustainable perspective. I know we say that a lot at Taraki, but creativity is really a big part of that.
I think you've explained that really well about how these things kind of link together, and also, as you mentioned, just trying to reconnect with things that we might have done in the past and we might have detached from for a period of our life.
Yeah, and just to add to what you were saying about music, this is more of a funny story. In 2007, my brother brought a Mac on a student discount. As part of that deal,
you have to say student discount because
they're
expensive.
It was a big Mac, and he got a student discount, but they threw in a iPod Touch back in 2007. And so like I stacked up my songs on there, but the soft ballads by Phil Collins, you could rename the tracks. So like Phil Collins, You Know What I Mean, One More Night. I love Phil Collins because you would listen to him on Magic 105.4 FM. This isn't an endorsement, that's just how I remember it. But the soft ballad songs on there, I renamed them as like I don't know, like Slipknot or like something like Linkin Park, so that the people would just skip over them. So when I needed to go to Phil, and then in school I just wanted to listen to Phil, or like even Genesis, I would just go like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go listen to like someone like a DMX. I'm like, why do you have two DMX? Oh yeah, don't worry about the second DMX. It's just there. It's a Mac era. But that really helped me in my teenage years. I remember in 2007, I have a very good memory. Summer 2007, I discovered like Genesis as a band and Phil Collins, and like One More Night and like On the Way to Heaven, like all those like soft ballads were so incredible. I could feel things I hadn't really felt before. But it's the fact that I would hide them from my friends because I know I had an iPod Touch back in 2007. People were like, what is this technology? So my friends would want to listen to my music and they would go through all the songs. No, skip, just go to your DMX. You don't need to listen to that one. So there was a big sense of like hiding. And like I said, it's about, at the time it was about seeking safety. And I would really do anything to seek safety as a teenage boy becoming a man. And a lot of that was shunning away the soft creative sides. And I was just lifting weights and I was hiding my Phil Collins songs.
That's a great story. That's a great. I'm gonna rename stuff on our devices. And Sim, I guess like what Damour mentioned there about pushing stuff away and then reconnecting with it. Obviously, one of the key themes in what you discussed is reconnecting with a form of expression that means a lot to you. Has that always been there? Like, how did you feel that you also had to kind of push it away, or?
Yeah, I think there was a kind of big disconnection between kind of who I was with, my community, where I grew up, and maybe like my own identity. Like I'm softly spoken, I'm not a loud person, but we're talking to Punjabi people that I grew up around, they're very loud. The music is very loud. It's like dancing music for a reason. Very fast paced, and I'm more of a sit back and chill and think a bit more deeply. And as you're kind of growing up in that environment, eventually you will start to feel like you don't fit in there. So as much as we're talking about self-expression and finding your identity, it's also important like where you are, where you fit in the wider community. People talk about finding your tribe and all this. I think it's really important. The two are very well connected. And then as you kind of move further out and you live in different places, you see all different kinds of people practicing all different kinds of art, non-traditional taste in music or whatever it is. Then with that you get the realization, oh yeah, there's loads of people that don't fit the norm. People like me, you can exist and not fit a certain stereotype, it's fine. But if you don't see it, then it's hard, right? If you don't see things around you. But at the same time, there's a beauty in having a culture and community that has consistency and is kind of disciplined in certain things as well. Like I have a deep appreciation for that. Whether it's like traditional ways of dressing, speaking, formalities, unique dances, or whatever it is, right? That's great and that has its place, but then there's also other things. So just finding your way in the world, I think everyone's different.
If you had any advice for 16-year-old Sim, what would that piece of advice be?
That's a good question. Probably take more risks. Yeah, I started taking more risks much later on, I think. So there's a whole chunk of my life where this is the realization that came later on in my 20s, that life is passing by and I'm just there. I'm on the ride, but I'm not participating. I'm not driving. I'm not in the driver's seat, I'm just like a passenger. So I need to make more decisions that are impacting my life, because those decisions are being made, whether or not it's me making them or someone else. I'm being impacted by that. So yeah, the tying it back to photography and creativity is when you're taking pictures is a beautiful thing in spotting beauty in little things, everyday things. Could be someone's expression, someone thinking, could be a bird or a building, or whatever it is. You start to see these things for what they are in their context. Not everything fits in certain places. It's okay, that maybe this bird looks better in this beautiful garden, or even like something bright next to something really dark gives a contrast, and then you appreciate it even more. And if it was all the same, it wouldn't be as beautiful, I guess, in that context. So, in this recent journey of the last few years, meeting all these different kinds of people, the appreciation for what it means to be Punjabi or Sikh or be from this area, I appreciate it more because I've seen myself in it more now.
Amazing. And I guess for the others as well, if you were speaking to your 16-year-old self, what piece of advice would you give them?
Oh my God. Well, I probably have to write a book, I think, to...
That's not a piece of advice for a 16-year-old.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, thinking about what we were listening to when we were growing up. So when I was 16, I was listening to like Celine Dion at the top volume in my box room, and my brother remembers it because it was on loop, and I was singing it at full belt. So I had my teenage years were very different in some ways. I was in the culture, but I was looking for ways out as well, and I had to spend a lot of time finding a space. So I guess maybe going back to your point, Sim, about taking risks, I guess maybe if I'd known then that I would find that space, and that space wasn't that far away from where I was, I just needed to be patient and wait for it. Because, yeah, I think when you live here, and I haven't lived here for a long time now, you can get really stuck in this idea that this is the world. But this is such a particular place. It's got many positives, it's got many challenges too, but it's such a particular place. And as we said, we've got a long history of, our culture is very broad and old, and has got everything in it, everything that you'd expect. Vulnerability, stories, love, romance, everything is in there. But I think if you live here, you can get really stuck, and it's pressured living in London. You have to work, you've got families, all that kind of stuff. So I say that there is a whole world out there. So you will find your tribe. There are people out there who are doing things that you are also doing.
And if you don't find your tribe, you can always create one.
That's it.
But that's another thing. On this journey, meeting all these different creative people, one of the highlights for me in the last couple of years was kind of seeing it all come together. We had a film screening in Brentford. There was a short film that we created, a few of us got together and made it about what it means to be, the topic was about Hounslow, West London in general. And we made it into a short film about the many different faces of people in Hounslow and symbolically what that means. But when it came to the film screening, it was a massive turnout because all the people that we met along the way in the last couple of years, people from different corners, they all came together in this venue, and it felt like we achieved something. We got together a group of like-minded people, or maybe they think differently, or they're creative in their own ways, or they have different experiences, but they all come together for one purpose: to connect, to help each other, support. Maybe you don't have that, or you don't see that, but you can definitely start creating that. It's just an option maybe people don't see when they're younger, maybe.
And for Manu and Taimur, again, that question about your 18 or 16-year-old self, what's the piece of advice?
Kind of a funny one, actually, but it's kind of a real one, I think, and my wife will laugh. I didn't start putting face masks on until later in life. So from a physical point of view, I wish at 16, when I had spots, someone told me about skincare. and like putting a face mask on, like actually like an actual mask. Because I was like, I got this oily skin, I'm a teenager. Again, why can't a guy put a face mask on? It's all about how you look outside in the world in Southall, yeah? But we're not even taking care of ourselves. And every famous celebrity and artist in the world is behind the scenes taking full care of themselves in the studio, behind Glastonbury stages. But when it comes to like growing up, I wish someone said, Money, you know what? Put a face mask on. Here's some good like Clinique that you can put on. So that's just the physical fun, like a funny thing, because I thought, someone, you need some advice like that, when you're young.
One of the best things was, I got married 8 months ago, and I'm so glad I had that patterned off before I got married.
It's important.
Because then when my wife opens the cupboard in the bathroom and it's got all my skincare stuff, it's like, whoa. Yeah. But and my brother's there using like a single hand towel, just like scrub his face.
Yeah, but the more I even just asking that question, it just makes you think about how you like self-care when you're growing up. Like I self like my beard, all the things I reject. Like my hair is curly as hell. Like I've got to tame it. But I love my curly hair. When I was young, when I meet other South Asian people or I meet other people, like all my family, other people, they all have curly hair. Like, so I'm like, but when I was young, it was like, shave it, like, not even a skin fed was like, Money, you look like a rude boy or something. Like, it was just very like, I couldn't embrace my natural parts of my, so I guess it leads on to other things as well. Like the things that you probably should take care of when you're growing up, when you're going through like puberty, we all have it. No one's educating us in the Punjabi space about skincare or looking after yourselves, and what you eat, and having the mixed grill every Friday is probably not good for you. And like all these kind of things, and look what you're drinking, like that's why it's great what the great guys behind us. Imagine having that in your body at the age of 16 all your life, rather than going towards like a beer every night on a Friday, which is the culture here in Southall. And it's beautiful culture because it's like a social club in Southall. People don't really go there to drink, they go to see their friends, but it is around alcohol. So yeah, that just probably more of a physical sense what I would tell my younger self, which is look after yourself. And now with the young people in my life, like nephews and nieces, or maybe more nephews than nieces, but nephews, I always like kind of try to guide them and be like, it's all right to like use this cream or do this. And even my boys in the WhatsApp group, like we all like, yeah, I use that one, I use this one, and it's kind of good. So that's one from a physical sense, and embracing your physical sense as well. If you have curly hair, if you have grey hair, or if you have a hair, like I want to get tattoos, and a tattoo artist last week's like, where are you going to put it? Shave your hair. I'm like, nah, man, my hair is sacred, I'm only Sikh on Sundays. I say that a lot to people because that's how I grew up. I went Gurdwara on Sunday and then I wasn't really properly Sikh, but I am Sikh. That's who I am. But I was like, nah, my hair, I've learnt my hair is sacred. I like to embrace my hair. So I'm not shaving my hair for a tattoo. I've got to fit it in somewhere. So I'd say embrace your physical parts of yourself, and also try to like look at skincare. But the other thing I tell myself as an 18-year-old is like use what's in front of you more, like instead of trying to fight it, because everyone has fight, or everyone has like or love or different emotions in their life. There's things going on. You might be around families. There might be divorces going on in your families. There might be children or kids acting a certain way. Your school might be challenging exams. But try to use that. And when I was young, no one told me to like, or not told me or guided me like, hey, Money, I know that's happening around you, but why don't you use that and challenge it? And then you could do something with it, create your own space, create your own culture or something. But no one really guided me in that way. It was more just like, well, if you're not, that's just what it is. So, Southall's got no like art shop. So what are you gonna do? Okay. No one said, hey guys, why don't we come together and get an art shop? Why don't we go to like a graphic design studio and buy loads of art and put it in the Minion Centre, and kids can access that every Saturday and Sunday? No one, or the teachers, no one was thinking or guiding. It was very much, we don't have, so we don't do. So I think use what you have, because around me when I was 18, there was loads of wicked things, but I just didn't use that. Now in everything I do, I use what I have. All my shirts and materials I use is repurposed from like dead stock in Southall shops. Not this, but other stuff it's all repurposed. I ain't got, I'm not in Mayfair. I ain't got Savile Row around the corner. Yeah, I got Himalaya Palace. I got a whole place full of tailors. Work with what I have. Yes, they don't make shirts every day, but they make suits and saris. That's way more advanced than a shirt. Use what you have, literally. I ain't got football pitches in Southall everywhere when I was growing up. So it's like play on the road, play in the alleyway. We did that, but it was like, again, that's what I would tell. And I only found out later that actually we were using what we had when we were younger. Even now when I do art in Southall, I very rarely like use a canvas, because when I was young, I didn't really have a canvas. I didn't know what art was. art was like Van Gogh or Picasso, I was like, I don't really like those artists. But Henry Taylor is one of my favorite artists, and he uses what you have. He literally uses what he has, and I think that's great because when I do art in South, I use what I have. Got loads of bricks, got loads of rubbish, got loads of mattresses, got loads of fridges, got loads of random things like carom boards that jazz musicals. He's always giving me his spare ones, old ones, and I use them to do things with. All the dead stock material, use that. So again, I wish someone told me that when I was young, use what's around you rather than kind of go, I ain't got nothing to do, there's nothing there. There actually is, if you look deeper, and people guide you to use what you have.
And I think that points to a really important conversation when we're doing this kind of work in our communities, which is about looking at our strengths. Because we know that there's different challenges, different problems within our communities across a whole different range of areas. But if we want to try and resolve those issues, we can't come in and say, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, you need to change everything, this all needs to change. Really, we need to be identifying what we've got around us as parts of the solution. Because it's a lot easier to say to someone, actually, you're already doing this, let's do this in a different way, than saying, you need to start doing something completely new in a completely new way. And so that's, I think, a really beautiful comment about the fact that we have a lot, we have so much. It might not be the stuff that other people associate with, whether it's creativity, whether it is mental health and well-being, but we know our community is the best, and we're able to build with those building blocks. And I think that's really quite beautiful. Damoor, 16-year-old Damoor, he's in the gym for the third time in the same day. What are you telling 16-year-old Damoor, if you're able to even get any time with him?
Well, we had weights and stuff at home, so I didn't need to go to the gym.
Okay.
But I would
home
say,
gym.
Yeah, home gym, which made it so much more easier. I would say just go for walks more. Like you said, work with what you have. And I think at the time I didn't necessarily have the skills to be able to manage my emotions. I was angry a lot. I would just get angry and I'm the kind of angry, I'm angry in my head, and I'm not angry outside. So it's a worse kind of erosive kind of anger. And so for me, it's just go for walks more. When I started doing kickboxing, which really helped me with my anger at 19, I would just walk, and I would just keep walking. I would walk to the bus stop and then take the bus, or I would walk to I would see how far I can get to my kickboxing class having walked without using the bus immediately. And I would process a lot of my thoughts and emotions just by the act of walking. Back then there wasn't Instagram or any kind of social media, so you didn't have a therapist telling you, try bilateral stimulation or something like that. So I was doing those things without knowing I was doing them, and that helped me a lot with my processing or managing my mental well-being. So for my 16-year-old self, I would say go for more walks. I would say do less bicep curls and maybe more walks. And I think a really big thing would also be similar to what you said, almost treat yourself as if you're sacred. I know if you meet my school friends, again, so much of my masculinity was tied to my physical sense of self. So I would wear extra small t-shirts, and I would be doing push-ups and just constantly on the move, but that was a way to channel my anxiety. I didn't know I could do more creative things. So treating myself as more sacred, as something that was more transactional. I think that's how I saw myself as, because I didn't necessarily feel grounded in myself. I just saw something, because emotions went through me, I also felt like I was just going through me all the time. So it was a very repetitive, toxic way. So now as I've gotten older, similar to what you all were saying, I do try to treat myself with better respect, that sense of sacredness, whether it's my hair, whether it's my skin, and also what's inside. I think that's really important, because I think looking back at my 16-year-old self, I just didn't know what was going on. I just had all this anger and nothing to do with it, and I didn't know how to manage my emotions. So I just almost felt like a repeat of the same day, but the weights helped me, and then over time things got better. Just didn't have a clue. So I think the best thing I would just say to my 16-year-old self is just go for a walk. Maybe that's just a good starting point. So now, if I'm not feeling great, I'll just go for a walk. I don't need to do anything extensive right now. I just need to go for a walk, and by the time I get back from the walk, we'll see what else needs to be addressed. But just go for a walk.
And I think that ties together the conversation about what we're like when we're younger and how we see our different expressions of emotion, whether that is through going to the gym constantly or whether that is through those spaces where you can reflect and you can channel your emotions slightly differently, which is a really important conversation within our communities because, as we were talking about earlier, there is so much around us. There is so much creativity. There's so many types of expression. We don't need to be tied to one form of expressing ourselves, whether that's through anger, through rage, through hatred as well. It feels like there's a whole load of different ways that we can express ourselves. And so we are slowly coming towards the end of the discussion, but what I wanted to leave us with is what our positive future vision is for our communities, specifically for mental health and well-being for Punjabi men. What is our positive future vision and where do we hope to be in 10, 20, 30 years' time, however that might be? What does that look like? What does that feel like? It's a big question.
I guess my positive imagination of the future, I think it's kind of happening in the present. So I think that this event, talking to younger people than myself who are going through things that I had to go through a bit later, but I'm more aware of them now at a younger age, have more access, maybe don't always get to see the thing, but there are more things out there. So I think my hope for the future is these things continue to grow, people continue to become aware of more options, we get more connected, we care for each other better through those connections. And I kind of feel like those seeds are here in the present and they're kind of growing at the moment. So yeah, I feel optimistic about that.
I think now the standard has kind of gone up as well in terms of what people expect, and now is you can't really shy away from doing the work, or like people say doing the work. I mean, like you can't ignore things, you can't distract yourself from certain issues that you may have. Someone will call you out on it eventually. This kind of environment we're in now, people are very aware of any negative traits that people might have, in a good or bad way. But I'm excited to see in the next 20, 30 years, this generation of people, when they lead the next generation, what they're going to be like. Do they carry on those traumas or negative traits with them? Do they address them? I think a lot of the work is being done now. The initial seeds have been sown. So, yeah.
It's a big, broad question, but I guess it's also good to hear that you're feeling that we are headed in the right direction, because things change quite quickly, but also don't change quite quickly. So it's positive to hear that. And I guess for Timur or Manu,
I'm still thinking, to be honest. I don't know. It's a big question, to be fair.
It is.
But, so if you want to go.
Yeah, for me, it's like free community spaces where people, specifically Punjabi men, are able to just gather and have access to without feeling like they need to perform or feeling like there's expectations of them. I mean, I feel quite positive, I guess, because I am very fortunate to work in it at Taraki. But for me, really, all I care about is free community spaces where people feel like they can just be themselves, whether it's Punjabi men, Punjabi women, regardless of how you identify. You just have that space that you can go to, because essentially what's happening is that community spaces are being eroded, right? Cost of living plays a significant role in it, but yeah, there are no spaces where you can just go and be. Like, not to get too political about it, but like, football matches, you can't go and just go to a match anymore. That is so expensive, and there's waiting lines for the clubs that you grew up supporting. So for me, I'm such a big, not even a fan, I'm like a very religious about the fact that we need more community free spaces where people can just gather. And I think I would just love that for our communities. Like an event today, like the ones that we do in Southall or in Leeds, not necessarily plug our work, but that is a good example of where you can just go and be yourself without having expectations. and not having to feel like you have to pay to get in. That for me is a really, really big thing. So yeah.
Thank you, Timur. Still thinking?
I'm still thinking.
Yeah, sat here for 3 hours.
Yeah, no, I won't think too long, don't worry. Everyone's done really well by sitting and listening so beautifully. I guess like space is something I talk about a lot. So that's why I'm in this space, is to champion what you're trying to do. What you're speaking about. So yeah, I don't want to tag on to what you said, but I think it's probably in interest of time, but also it's got me thinking a lot. I just want to be authentic with how I answer the question. I probably can't answer that question if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But I think there's a reason why I'm in this building right now, and there's a reason why I'm here. Like things I've done.
But there's a vision you have for here.
Yeah, and we, probably I is the wrong word, but we as a community, meeting people like Sim, what he's doing, and other people in the community, we as a collective are thinking a lot more thoughtfully about holding spaces in the spaces where the global majority, underrepresented communities live, work, and play. You know, I say that sentence a lot, but that is true. It is a consciousness about doing something here rather than in a more established space or a space that we can't identify with. So yeah, just to tag on with that, I think that's kind of an interesting point, because even people in the library, community centre, the people you'll meet as you walk out this building, people you might come across in the toilet, the things you might see, they're also seeing you, they're also seeing us. And that's important for the communities, that they see people like us actually here. And that's not just about Southall, actually, that's about within, wherever you're from, like doing things and holding conversations and spaces in those. So yeah, and I think, again, now I've got thinking about it, is probably ownership of spaces as well. I think a lot of spaces within a corporate sense, whether it's music or even the arts spaces, are run by institutions. And those institutions might have representation in those spaces. I work for one of those institutions at the moment, which is Gunnersbury Park Museum, which is great, but it's still a predominantly non-global majority space. And, you know, and that's a fairly local museum, and we've done a very representative exhibition just recently. So it's great, but still, it's still not, you know, when you go to your area or my area, there's not our spaces where we're owned or curated completely by us. And when I say us, I mean the global majority, I mean ethnic minorities, I mean people from whatever background they are. It doesn't mean that you're a British white person, that you feel seen in a British white systematic place. That you might feel underrepresented there. You know, so actually I think it's just more spaces that are owned, curated, and driven by people who are maybe marginalized. But yeah, space is really something that I'll take that away from today, because I'm very grateful you held this here. Because it just, after this event, people seeing you walking, Taraki, just there might be a young person or a person in their 60s or 70s, you know, even a heavy drug user, you know, outside, which there will be, and you'll see them probably, you might not notice them, but they're here, they're in the space around us. They might see something, and that is really that's kind of a big thing of the day as well, is who it's happening here, right? It's not happening in Zone 1 Central, where those people aren't there. They are really on the periphery. Here it's in your face. We have Rise in the building. We have a heavy problem in the car park. You know, I'm not selling the space much, but I'm being truthful with everyone here. That's why I'm really gassed that you're here, because there's challenges here, especially this part of Southall. Like, this is different to the other side of Southall. So, yeah.
And there's a way that you have to meet those challenges head on in the grassroots. So like all of these conversations, all of this change happens at the grassroots, and it happens when you're with and alongside communities, going through the good, going through the not so good, but ultimately you're all taking steps forward together. And I think that's a beautiful way to end the live podcast section of the discussion today. I just wanted to say a massive thank you to our guests for being a part of the Punjabi Mental Health Podcast by Taraki. And we appreciate you sharing your experiences, offering your expertise, and being able to create that community today in that space. And we're looking forward to kind of those further conversations that are going to take place as well. And just want to say a massive thank you.
Thank you.